My name's Mary Fetchin. I'm Executive Director at Voices Center for Resilience, and Voices provides long-term support for victims' families, responders, and survivors. And we're also doing training to help take what we've learned to help other communities prepare for, respond to, and hopefully recover from other tragedies. And on behalf of all of us at Voices, I want to welcome you to tonight's presentation, How We Go On Getting Through the Holidays, with our dear friend, Dr. Ken Druck. So a little bit about Dr. Druck. Ken is the recipient of the prestigious Distinguished Contribution to Psychology and Visionary Leadership Awards. He has inspired and guided readers, clients, and the general public for over 40 years. Ken has written several books, including his recently released How We Go On, Self-Compassion, Courage, and Gratitude on the Path Forward, which was touted by Katie Couric and many others as a must-read. So if you haven't bought the book, I encourage you to do that. And it's the topic of tonight's conversation. A specialist in healing after loss, family relationships, and real resilience, Ken has helped countless individuals, couples, families, organizations, and communities turn their greatest losses and challenges into opportunities for becoming a better, stronger, and smarter version of themselves. And I hope he's going to be doing that for all of us today. Ken lost his 21-year-old daughter, Jenna, tragically, and started a foundation in 1996 in her name. Ken's been a longtime friend of Voices, beginning shortly after 9/11, when he facilitated conversations at some of our first September symposiums with 9/11 families and also the Oklahoma City families. Most recently, Ken presented just this year at our symposium last September, and he was a huge hit. So, backed by popular demand, I want to introduce you to our dear friend, Dr. Ken Druck. Ken?
Mary, it's always such a joy to be with you. You know, there are the people in this life who just lift you up, lift your heart, lift your spirit. And you are the embodiment of everything I admire, everything I value and cherish, and your courage, what you've done and what we both have done together. So it's a joy to be here and to be with all the families and individuals that come to Voices. I want to give everybody an A++ for showing up, because just showing up is the beginning of getting through the holidays. You know, that's what it's about. And we're going to go through a bunch of good stuff today about what we can do. And before we get into all these solutions, you know, I want to invite all of us to take that healing deep breath and put our hands on our hearts, you know, because there's no quick fix. There's no quick solution. There's nothing that takes away parts of our sorrow. It's connected to our love. You can't take away that part of our sorrow any more than you can take away our love, the love that never dies. So here we are, you know, and people say, Ken, how are you doing? And I say, you know what? I walk with a limp in my heart, as I'm sure many, or if not most of you do. So we can start this journey looking into things we can do to help ourselves, looking into the things that we do to heal, to clear that path forward to our best possible future, and how we honor those that we have lost, those that we're now challenged to go on without in the way that we're used to having them. We can face into that, but respectfully knowing that we walk with a limp in our hearts, and we don't have to ever defend that or explain it or be embarrassed or ashamed about it or feel guilty about it. It's our part of our journey. It's part of us. It's part of the way we begin to go on, is to say, you know what? I've taken a big hit in my life. And I go on and I know that, and I don't try to dismiss it or ignore it or deny it, hide it, repress it. I face into it. And that's why I'm here today. So let's face into it together. What exactly are the holidays? What is a holiday or an angel versary or whatever? Well, it's a time where people gather to celebrate. It's sacred. It's gift giving. It's feasting. We get to take a break from work, school, our schedules. It's the ending this time of year. It's the ending of a year. 2023. When did we ever get to 2023? How did it ever get to be that far? It's the ending of this year and the beginning of a new year. And that could alone mean so much to you. It's a time of family gatherings, holiday decorations, parties, and whatnot, a time of spiritual and religious deepening, rituals, reawakenings, a time of rededication to matters of faith, honor, and remembrance. We're going to be talking about honor a whole bunch in a second. But it's also a consumer-driven time of extreme commercialization. We are bombarded from every aspect with the idea that we are supposed to be gathered. There's not supposed to be an empty chair at our table. There's supposed to be, everybody's supposed to be there, but something is very different. Why are the holidays, what are they in 2023? Well, our grief over the loss of our loved one, whether it's this year or last year or in past years, has been compounded, hasn't it? By the turbulence in our world: terrorism, war, natural disasters, humanitarian crises, political discord and corruption, financial insecurities, the price of food, and so much more. And we have to factor that in. The world is in turbulence right now as we are grieving. Headlines bring us predominantly bad news, remind us how fragile all of life is. And those of us whose loved ones have died in recent times, no matter how, often struggle just to get through the holidays. So how do we face into that struggle is the question. How do we go on when the holidays become a season of loss? Well, the first thing we might want to do is to look at, I just got through Thanksgiving. What did I do on Thanksgiving and preparing for and having Thanksgiving? If that's a holiday, did I skip it? Did I do some things that really helped me get through Thanksgiving? So we have recent experience we can refer to. What worked well? If we were sitting in a room together in a support group, I'd be asking everybody around the room, tell me what you did that you feel really good about, that you did during Thanksgiving, that was helpful to you, that kept it simple, that you really took care of yourself, that you really planned well, that all the things that would have made it even more difficult, you didn't do. You were aware of those things. So being aware of our recent experience of what worked, because the holidays have they're already well started with Thanksgiving. Yeah, we've got Christmas, Hanukkah, the New Year's, and things to do and places to go. But what we did well over Thanksgiving may be calling us to think about it again and really prepare, because setting the table for this holiday season by talking together today, by exploring all the options. What are my options? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Who should I be with? Who shouldn't I be with? Because when I'm with them, it takes energy from me. So all those are important planning questions, and we're going to come up with a master plan. Reduce the pressure to make it what it used to be. When we've suffered a year of loss, we've suffered a loss, and we're walking with that limp in our heart, and so much of the air has been taken out of our sails. How do we reduce the pressure to make it what it used to be? So often when we've lost a loved one, we have this hidden fear that not only have we lost somebody we love, we've lost the world. We no longer fit in. We no longer belong. We no longer qualify. And we put pressure on ourselves that we don't really need to make it what it used to be, to go to the party that we always go to do the decorations the way we always have. Let's rethink the pressure we put on ourselves to make it what it used to be, giving ourselves permission to opt out of or modify holiday rituals, gatherings, and these things that create pressure, and making a plan for managing the grief, the sorrow, the heartache, the uncertainty that will likely arise. We can all predict, you know what? I can guarantee between now and the end of the year, I'm going to be somewhere probably at a family gathering, and I'm going to be thinking about, my God, Jenna should be here. I wonder if Jenna had lived, would she be bringing her kids? What would she be talking about? How would she feel about what's happening in the world? What would she be saying to me? She loved her dad. Her dad loved her. How much hugging and squeezing and kissing would there be? What would she have brought to dinner? What would she have made? How would she have enhanced this beautiful family gathering? So I can guarantee I'm going to be thinking about that. So I want to make sure I do some things to prepare for that so I don't get ambushed by that kind of a predictable feeling that's going to come up for me. And to make a plan for reducing the sadness, the separation that we're likely to feel. These are all important things to do. Okay. So when I was there, Mary, with you guys a couple of months ago, we talked about my new book. And you know what? I started that talk by saying that we all of us and everybody we know is having a what now moment right this second, having a what now moment. We're sitting in the middle of a question, something that's weighing on our heart, an opportunity, a decision, a deliberation, a dilemma, something that's weighing on our heart that needs our attention. The holidays create a what now moment. So to meet this moment, you've shown up here, and I want to, like I said before, just congratulate you. I invited you to think about what you did and didn't do well over Thanksgiving. You could chart that down. And the worst case scenario, all right, let's go to the worst. I used to tell my consulting clients, what's the worst thing that could happen to your company? What's the best thing that could happen to your company? And what's probably going to happen? So oftentimes it helps to get the worst case. What's the worst case? The worst case is that I'm underwater. I'm gasping for air. I'm inescapably overwhelmed by the sadness, the fear, the trauma, the uncertainty. I'm feeling lost, irreparably broken, inconsolably confused in a new and distressfully unfamiliar normal. I'm defenseless against my own unspeakably painful missing, yearning, and having lost. I'm self-defeatedly self-critical. My foot is on my throat. I'm telling myself, what's wrong with you? Why can't you go to that party? How come you're still feeling this? I've got my foot on my throat. I'm prosecuting myself. I'm criticizing myself. I'm diminishing myself. And that is the self-defeating behavior. We're going to talk a lot more about that because unfortunately, most of us do that to some extent. We don't even know we're doing it, but the way we talk to ourselves is so lacking in self-compassion and support and encouragement and kindness. And we're going to talk more about that in a second. But in this worst case scenario, we're isolating. We're feeling horribly alone. We're separate and apart from our family, our friends, our community, and the world. It's almost like we've stepped out into a new life where there's only lostness and emptiness and pain. So this is the worst case scenario. Let's move on from there because we're not going to allow that to happen. What we can do to get through the holidays, as I started to say, is keep our hands on our heart and our foot off our throat. When I have my hand on my heart, the things that I'm doing and the way that I'm talking to myself and treating myself is with kindness. Most important word, patience. I'm allowing myself to be human, to go through this experience. I'm allowing myself to not know what I should do or what the solution is to start healing my heart that is so broken, the sorrow and the pain that are so intense. How could I know? So, patience, kindness, support, encouragement, humility. That's my hand on my heart. My foot on my throat, as I said before, is impatience. What's wrong with you? Hurry up. Get over it. Get on with it. Why can't you believe that? Where's your faith gone? It's all the things that I could say to myself if I were a prosecutor in a courtroom with only a prosecutor. No defense attorney, no judge, no jury, just somebody producing evidence to diminish me. That's what we do with our foot on our throat. So I suggest, how can we get through? We adopt a no pressure, guilt, or fear policy. I'm not going to torment myself with pressure, guilt, or fear. I'm going to face into those things and I'm going to work through them. And we're going to talk about how we do that in a second. But I think it's critically important to think about what are the things that I would give myself permission to say no to, even though I feel guilty because I've been this compliant person who says yes to everything, who agrees to everything. I'm the type A man or the type E woman who's everything to everybody else. I'm a pleaser. I comply. I feel badly and I say yes. What do I need to give myself permission to say no to during the holidays? Because they just don't fit. It's not the right time for that. What can I give myself permission to say yes to? Things that would lift my heart, would help clear the path forward, that give me a moment of joy, of an encouragement, of lightheartedness. What could I say yes to? And even in a limited way, maybe I say yes to an invitation. If Mary called me and said, hey, Ken, come over for the holidays, and if I had just suffered my loss, I might say, Mary, is it okay with you if I come over just for about a half an hour? Is that okay with you? Because that's about all I can do these days. I can just do about a half an hour. And beyond that, I start to drown. My head feels like it's going to fall off. My heart starts hurting. I get triggered. And Mary, if it's not okay, I'll come over some other time, maybe in the beginning of the year sometime. And I'm hoping that my friend Mary is grief literate and understands and is supportive. She's not somebody who, because so many people, what do they try to do? They try to figure us out and fix us as though what we've gone through is fixable, instead of doing what we really need, which is to be with us, to stand with us, to walk with us, to listen to us, to help us explore what we believe are our good options. And when asked, to be able to share, hey, here's something I did that was helpful for me. But that's what we need. We need be with, not figure out and fix. Next, stay ahead of the pain curve. We get a headache or we go through a medical procedure. What does the doctor say? Please take one of these every couple hours. How do we stay ahead of the pain curve when the pain is what's in our heart? How do we not let it build up to a certain point? Somebody after the first year that I lost Jenna said to me, when I said her anniversary was coming up, and they said, no, it's an angelversary. And Ken, you don't need to re-traumatize yourself on that day. And I thought, what could I do that would be different? So what I do is the day before Jenna died every year, I do something the day before or the day after. I do things to take the bite. I do things to take some of the intensity out of that day. And it works. That's what works for me. Not that it would work for everybody, but that's what works for me. Your job is to figure out what works for you. And I'm going to show you some other items on the menu. Do not stay ahead of the pain curve. And the way that we do that is how? We get enough rest, right? Even if we're not sleeping, we rest during the day, we meditate, we exercise, we vent with trusted confidants, we download, we unburden ourselves of this mountain of sorrow that we've been carrying, and no matter how long it's been. And we don't re-traumatize ourselves or our family by trying to do too much, by trying to replicate the past, by overdoing it. We talk with our family. We ask for everybody to say what they feel would be most helpful, how they want to spend the holidays. We get everybody's input, and then we kind of put it all together and we agree on what we can do. So trust your intuition. Skip what doesn't feel right and do the shortened version of the things that do feel right. Next, I think it's so important for us to discern between choice and choicelessness. When I started my daughter's foundation, just as Mary and Frank started Voices, and so many of you helped out. I started the Jenna Druck Center, and I got called into unimaginable, unspeakable situations. In one case, there was a beautiful young woman in Southern California who had been kidnapped, and they found out we finally found her. She had been raped and murdered. And her parents came in, we found her body, and I met her parents at the funeral home where we had brought her body. And I'm standing there for an hour and a half with her parents, who were viewing her body and crying and speaking to her and just going through everything they needed to do to find some measure of peace before they buried her. And I'm standing there, and we were all going to come back the next day for the celebration of this beautiful young woman's life. And on the way home, I saw that I got a call from a friend of mine. And there's a friend of mine who has written books on the law of attraction and positive thinking and whatnot. And I called him back, and his answering machine answered. And the first thing on the answering machine, he wasn't there. It said, "Remember, it's your choice to have a great day." And I thought to myself, my God, what would it be for me? It would be a blasphemy. It would be a sacrilege for me to go to these parents or anybody who had suffered a traumatic loss and to say, "Remember, it's your choice to have a nice day." No. Our pain, our sorrow, our trauma is choiceless. In the beginning, we don't have the capacity to flip on a positive thinking scenario. We are in such pain and choiceless, inescapable sorrow. And that's what we go through. We look around the world, that's what a lot of people right now in the world are going through, who have lost their loved one or ones. They are in unspeakable sorrow. And for somebody to invoke a cliche or a positive thinking anthem or something would be totally inappropriate and insulting, and in some cases harmful. So we need to be able to discern between the sorrow, fear, helplessness, hopelessness, lostness, confusion, uncertainty, emptiness that we feel in the very beginnings, and sometimes that flare up in the course of our grief journey. We need to differentiate that from the time that we do get to choice. We realize, I may not get to play God. I couldn't control what happened, but I can be kind. I don't have to be unkind, impatient, critical, unsupportive, judgmental, disrespectful, dismissive, and unaccepting of myself. I can be kind, patient, supportive, encouraging, understanding, humble, compassionate, and respectful of me. So I can know the difference between things I have a choice and things that are really choiceless. This is critical, and I talked a little bit about it a minute ago when I said what we need is not people around us who want to figure us out and fix us. We need people who can be with us, But you know where that begins? It begins with us learning to be with ourselves over the holidays, over any days while we're grieving. How do I listen attentively to and learn from myself with my hand on my heart? How do I take steps to clarify and understand what I really want, what's really important? What's really important is such a critically essential question. You know, sometimes we feel the pressure to do something, and it's not necessarily what's best for us. And we got to ask ourselves, what's really important here? Is it really important for me to take care of myself for the long run? Because I've got a long journey ahead of me. Or is it really important to please my sister, my cousin, my neighbor, my good friend, and go ahead and do something that I just don't have enough wind in my sails to do. Being with ourselves means providing ourselves the opportunity to calm and quiet the internal noise that's playing in our mind, our impatience, our fear, our internal criticism, our uncertainty when we feel lost and sad. Being with ourselves means helping ourselves overcome the compulsion to figure things out and fix them, to speak with ourselves with patience, encouragement that helps us heal, grow, calm, and find that path forward. And that's what's important when it comes to really being with ourselves. And guess what happens when we've learned and we're learning how to be with ourselves? Other people learn how to be with us in the way that's supportive. You know, Mary mentioned my last book, How We Go On. You know, in the last part of that book, there's a section called the do's and don'ts of grief support. What do you do when you're supporting somebody who's just gone through a terrible loss? And what don't you do? And it's what I've learned from the people that I've worked with. I've learned from my own experience in my own life. Being with ourselves means meeting myself where I am with courageous honesty, holding myself close with deep empathy and caring. It means granting permission to not know, to be angry, to feel brokenhearted, empty, terrified, and even rageful when I need to. You know, there's something I call the objection. And sometimes we silence our objection, our anger, our outrage. You know, there's a part of us that just that's so angry, that's so outraged, but we tell ourselves, no, be a good boy, be a good girl. We don't want to look angry now. We want to we want to handle this in a way that wins everybody's respect and favor. And yet it would be so important for us to allow ourselves in the presence of our trusted confidant, in the presence of, I go down to the beach or out on a walk in nature, you know, or on my kayak out in the ocean, to allow myself to object to what happened. You know, get me customer service, get me, get me whoever, and sometimes that it morphs into a spiritual question. Get me God, get me all the powers in this universe that preside over what happens, or get me a flux capacitor. I want to go back in time. I want to undo this. So in those moments of outrage, sometimes in other cultures, people have so much more permission to wail, to yell, to scream, to object, to register that complaint to the universe. We don't know where it's going. It's not like we have a number for customer service. But to allow ourselves to object, because guess what comes right behind the release of that anger, of our helplessness, our impotent rage, or whatever it is, right behind the permission to release that and let it go is often our hand on our heart, feeling what's underneath all that, our sorrow, but also our hope. that when we meet our moments of lostness, guess what shows up? Our foundness. When we meet our moments of emptiness, rather than trying to run away from them, hide and avoid them, deny them, when we meet at emptiness, often what comes, because we heal from the inside out, what comes up is a foundness, is not an emptiness, is a fullness. So we fill with something that has hope in it, that has strength in it, that has energy in it, that has light in it. And so allowing ourselves, giving ourselves permission to object often yields to higher understandings, clearer understandings of what we want to do, what we need to do, what we feel, and of awakening the hope that's in all of us, the strength and energy that we are summoning, that we are calling forth from when we're saying, help. Not only do we need help from other people, we need help from within ourselves. But that is the summoning of energy and hopefulness in us. Let's keep going. How do we balance our sorrow with hopefulness? Well, we get out in front of the pain curve. How could you set the table for a gentle wind down of this year of 2023? I've got 2024 written. This year, what? How do you set the table? What will the new year, what could you be doing in the new year? I have an exercise I do every morning. I go for a walk in nature. There's a trail right around my house. And there might be somewhere, there's a park and a trail or whatever, a path. And I walk on it and I bring questions to every morning. I bring questions. Often they're the same questions. So it's my walking meditation. I ask myself, today, what's weighing most heavily on my heart? Today, what is making my heart sing? What's making my heart lift up? What's happening? Today, what promise would I make to myself to clear the path forward in my life so that I could make new memories and write new chapters? Because that's what I'm going to do. And then I always end with a note of gratitude. Today, I am grateful for what? And I try to fill in those answers. And that's the way I balance myself out. And that's the way I get on the hope and opportunity curve. This coming year, I will what? So I invite you to do that. I invite the expression of that, of you getting in touch with yourself as a way of balancing your hopefulness, honoring the one that you lost by making your love the central organizing principle of your life over the holidays. I realized early on that you want to come over and say hello? Come on. You can come up. Come on up. Come on up. You're going to meet some people. Come here. Come on. Come here. Come here. Come here. Up, up. There we go. Now you've got to say hello to everybody. Look, you're on. That's Jack. Hi, Jack. Okay. Are you finished whining now? Yeah. Okay. So that's, by the way, I don't have it written down anywhere or in the program, but if you have a dog, they are unconditional. They whine, but they're unconditionally loving and forgiving. And having a pet, or being an aunt or an uncle to a pet, is often a wonderful part of healing. So what I was saying is that, how do we honor? In the beginning of my loss, when I first lost Jenna, I realized that I didn't get to choose what happened, but I could choose to make my pain the central organizing principle of my life, and my sorrow, or my love for my daughter the central organizing principle of my life. And I thought a lot about the word honor. And over the years, I've been collecting all these ways of honoring. So I want to share them with you as a way of not only getting through the holidays, but harvesting the opportunities that the holidays might be presenting you with, and really changing your focus to getting through these, not just getting through, but taking advantage of and doing the work that will allow you to harvest the opportunity. The first honoring is your own survival. The way we honor those we've lost is to survive their death, is to invoke everything that we are learning about self-care. What is self-care? It's not enough to get a mani and a pedi. It really means taking all those, what I call self-care saboteurs, all those things we do because most of us know what self-care is. We know what we should be doing to take care of. Why don't we do it? Because we have all these self-care saboteurs, all these internal things that stand in the way. Oh, you're taking food out of somebody's mouth, or that's very selfish. I have a book called The Handbook of Self-Care, the Self-Care Handbook, which you can pick up on my website for free. But it details all the self-care saboteurs. On the other side of sabotage is honoring. So you surviving their death and saying, I'm going to honor you by living out the rest of whatever time I have in an honorable and good, by creating meaning, by holding you in my heart. That's coming up in a second. By doing all these things or not doing some things that really aren't good for me. That's the way I'm going to honor you. So what are the other honorings? Second honoring, do something good in their name. Light a candle. Take this webinar. Help Mary, become a volunteer for Voices. Take what you are learning and pay it forward to other families that are now going through similar losses. Whatever it is that you do good in their name, that is an honoring. It could be that, you are helping support an organization like Voices that is doing something so valuable and so important in the world. Maybe that's what you do. You send them, $100. Maybe it's lighting a candle every year. Whatever it is, do something good in their name. Begin to develop a spiritual relationship with them. There's something called the love that never dies. You know what I'm talking about. There are some forms of love that never die. They're undying. How can you continue to express your love? And since it's not going to be over a phone call or a holiday dinner on Christmas this year, it's going to be in the spiritual dimension. It's going to be in the imaginings that you're capable of. Since none of us has 100% evidence and proof that we know the absolute truth about what death is, or I don't know anybody who does, it's really where we place our faith. It's how we bet our faith. And I don't know what death is, but I tell my daughter I love her every day. I listen for her love. I remember all the ways of our loving relationship. I invoke those memories. I allow myself to miss her. Begin to develop a spiritual relationship means that in a place that's unseen, in a way that we must imagine or have a felt sense or read signs or whatever connection we are lucky enough to have, to use it, to let the love that we have with our lost person, the person we have lost, let it ripen, let it flourish, let it continue. The fourth honoring, embodying their essence in the way you live on. Here's a bunch of people who jumped out of a plane together. It was their wild irreverence that they were embodying in celebrating. You can see a bunch of people out in California where I am. There are paddle outs almost every weekend somewhere. People paddle out in the ocean on their surfboards to honor somebody who has died, who they absolutely love. And it's a celebration of honoring. And it's honoring that what they loved, what they stood for, something in their essence, their kindness, their enthusiasm, their support, their loving kindness, whatever it was. The fifth honoring involves so much courage. How can we summon newfound courage? I invite everybody to think about all the times in your life you had to become more courageous. Becoming a parent, maybe, falling in love, getting married, getting divorced, taking a certain job, leaving a certain job, whatever it is, facing life's terms. Maybe you turned 70 and you needed newfound courage to say, hey, I'm realizing life is a lease deal. I'm not going to live forever. That's a tough one. You know, it's an existential angst and sorrow that we're not going to always be here. But writing new chapters of life takes tremendous courage. It says, I'm going to continue to bring meaning and passion to my life. I'm going to write new chapters and create new memories. And I'm going to honor you by doing so. That's what you would want me to do. That's what I would want you to do had I gone before you. The sixth honoring, take the high road. Didn't we learn this after 9/11? After 9/11, in the work that I was doing and the way Mary and I were working together at times, and I was working at some of the centers that we had started, the one in the Rockville Center where I was born and went to school, but right outside of the city. We realized that the average age of the person who passed was 38. And who was the government communicating with often? Was it the mother and saying, well, you're her mother or you're his mother? You know, so what was happening? Often families in the rawness of grief, in the agony of grief, families were beginning to splinter. People were beginning to get very raw and angry with each other. You're never going to see your grandchildren again if you talk to me that way. Well, you know, your grandchildren are never going to see, you know, I don't care. You're not going to get an inheritance. The hell with you. You know, families were tearing apart, and we realized in the rawness of grief, we had to treat one another as an expression of our love for the person we lost. Please be patient and kind and understanding and forgiving. This is not the time to put up steel walls. This is not the time to say and do things that will forever cut somebody in your family or your inner circle. Take the high road. Yes, we live in a world that is grief illiterate for the most part. And people say and do stupid things, insensitive things. They don't know any better. Don't bite their nose off. Take the high road. Ask them if they're having a tough day. Because 9 out of 10 times, they're having a tough day. Take the high road. Lead with kindness, patience, understanding, and support rather than doing things that we do in the rawness of grief. The seventh honoring, give yourself permission to grieve. Not this way. Well, it's been not by the time clock. Some grief occurs outside of and beyond time. You can't look at somebody, talk to somebody's heart and say, hey, it's been, 22 years. What's your problem? You can't say that. Come on, it's the holidays. Let's dance, let's sing. You can't talk to a heart that way. A heart doesn't keep track of time. A heart knows the love that never dies, the love that's imperishable. Giving yourself permission to grieve, to feel sorrow, to be triggered. Sometimes I'm walking behind a young blonde girl who has my daughter's hair, and it's like suddenly, oh my God, Here I am being triggered. I could put my foot on my throat and say, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Or I can put my hand on my heart and just let the tears run a little bit. And then take a deep breath and go on. So giving ourselves permission to grieve is sacred. And the eighth honoring is to balance it all out by harvesting the love, the joy, the miracles, and the gifts of this life. My sister called me from New York last month, and she was crying on the phone. And her name is Roberta. I said, Bert, what's the matter? And she says, she said, here I am. I went to a Broadway show. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen. I went to a great dinner with old friends. How dare I do that? People are dying in the Middle East. After what happened, the Hamas terrorists in Israel, the bombing in Gaza, how could I possibly go to a Broadway show and a nice dinner? What world am I living in? And she was in tears. And I said, you know what, sweetheart? It's so important for all of us to come up for air, to watch stupid movies, to go to joyous events. Yeah, we might be triggered, but to come up for air and to balance it all out by also taking inventory of the gifts and miracles of this life, of the beauty, of the rainbows, of the kindness that people show to one another, of the good things that are happening in the world, the breaking news that's good. And she took that, and we talked for a while more, and it seemed to help. So how might this be an opportunity to turn down the volume on holiday dread, sorrow, and overwhelm? Well, steps for harvesting opportunities of this what now moment: to gently meet a moment of truth in our lives that we might otherwise squander by trying to hide, deny, and press and avoid it. The first thing I've said, I'll say it again. Replace self-criticism with self-compassion. Speak to yourself in the voice of kindness and patience. Number two, remember you're a work in progress. Don't fall prey to the old narratives, self-deprecation, impatience, toxic perfectionism, and free yourself. Allow yourself to be human, real, vulnerable, unknowing, unsure, uncertain, confused, lost, scared. And keep the faith. Keep on keeping on. Keep your hand on your heart as you go. Number three, again, prioritize what really matters. Take honest inventory. What really matters here? And make your decisions on those bases. One of the things I'm trying to do over the holidays, you guys are going to get to know me here, I'm sure this is a big share, is during COVID, I put on like 25 pounds. So I am really trying to do the inner work to lose the weight that I've been carrying. My knees are hurt. It's affecting my heart. And it took me taking honest inventory. What did I do? I got pissed off because I thought, what are you going to be? Are you going to be the dead grandpa to your grandkids? Grandpa died. You're going to miss out on all the years of having a grandpa because grandpa died because he wasn't taking care of his health. Or am I going to be the grandpa that sits in the chair because he can't bend over or go walking or playing soccer with his grandsons? I got angry, and it helped me anchor my commitment to not rewarding myself with food. So my holidays, the challenge of my holidays, I just gave it to you, is to really internalize that and make that commitment that I make to not reward myself with food, to reward myself by knowing that I'm doing everything in my power to be in my grandchildren's lives for a long time and to be the grandpa who kicks the soccer ball with them. So prioritize what really matters. That makes my heart sing. Dying young and missing out on their lives makes my heart heavy. And what do I need to give priority attention to? To whom and what in my life do I need to say yes and no to? We talked about that. 4, surround yourself with support. That's what you're here for. I wish in a little while we might be taking questions and answers. And I hope you can all see each other's faces. Surround yourself with the love and support that oozes from Voices and all of their programs. Build relationships with trusted confidants. Tell the people who love and care about you how you're doing and what you need. Can communicate it in a tone that inspires people to want to support you, not that burdens people and say, oh my God, what a victim. So the tone in which you ask for support and give support is also critically important. Next, summon newfound courage. Once again, courage, Maya Angelou used to call the greatest virtue. I love to say that. Cicero used to call gratitude the greatest virtue. So whatever you consider to be the greatest virtue, summon more of it. Allow yourself to call up bravery from within you, whether it's newfound bravery or old and tested bravery. The willingness and ability to bear the pain and sorrow of your loss over time, to embrace, your brokenness and walk with a limp in your heart is critical. And when I say embrace your brokenness, I'll tell you, if you could see me, if you were here up close with me and you looked into my eyes when I talk about Jenna, and I bet it's the same with you. If I were to ask you about the person or the people that you've lost, that you're here trying to heal your heart from, I would see a deep sorrow in your eyes, just like you would see in my eyes. You would see a brokenness, but you would also see something else, that the greatest part of my wholeness, because I am whole, I am strong. Ask Mary, she'll tell you, we are warriors, as are so many of you. You don't mess with us. We are fiercely determined warriors. We know what it means. We know what really matters, and we are willing to fight for it. But the way we do that is to turn our brokenness into an essential part of our wholeness. Instead of being ashamed of it, trying to lock it down into the basement or the dungeon or the cellar, to keep your hand on your heart when you feel broken as a way of making yourself whole. I talked about it before, master self-care. It's the cornerstone of resilience. It's the cornerstone of healing. It's the most underutilized resource in our health and wellness and personal and professional growth toolkits. Years ago, my first book I wrote was called The Secrets Men Keep. I should show Mary a picture of what I used to look like with big hair when I used to go on Oprah. I was the Dr. Ken on Oprah, and Oprah had big hair too. And we used to do shows with all male audiences. Oprah asked me to be on her show. I said, I won't come on unless there's an all male audience. And the first thing I would say is that the least utilized 4-letter word in the English language for men starts with an H. It's the word help. That if more men learned to be able to ask without shame or embarrassment or fear of being judged, to ask for help, we'd have a different world. Self-care is service to one's own well-being. And I wonder, what would your self-care handbook say? And again, if any of you would like a free self-care handbook, just go to my website. Step 7, summoning the strength to go on when life is ending. And why did I stick this slide in here? What the hell does this have to do with the holidays? Well, because there's a subject matter. It's the last chapter of my new book. The chapter is called Ken's Moonshot. What's the most impossible thing that nobody wants to talk about? Death. And yet it's something that all of us need to face into in some way to find some measure of peace. So the name of the title of the chapter is Ken's Moonshot, how we go on from death. Whether it's our death, our life is ending or is going to be over soon, or it's the life of somebody, or the shock that we're experiencing because of things that happen in our world, which we all are more than familiar with. How do we cultivate the courage, the peace, some element of peace? We don't do it all at once. Anybody who tells you, oh, I've got death figured out, I've got it handled, check. I've conquered all my fears of death. I kind of doubt it, because new fears erupt, especially as we get older. So how do we deal with that? Well, we cultivate. And part of the way we put our house in order and cultivate peace and cultivate some measure of peace is often by putting our house in order, and this, what I call the seventh generation approach, where we value the future of our kids, grandkids, community, nation, and world, where we do something to leave the world in good hands, to make the world, for our kids and grandkids and future generations can enjoy clean air, clean water, and more than anything, safety in the world. And the world is desperately in need. So are we going to be part of the problem in making the world less safe, or are we going to be part of the solution in making it more safe? And step 8 is the old give gratitude. It's Cicero's, remembering and thanking those who we've lost, remembering and thanking those who keep us, our family, nation, and world safe. Thank you, voices. Remembering and thanking those who stand, walk, cry, heal, support, and help us get through our dark night of the soul, and who have been helping us all these years. And, and all of this really adds up to, this is our message to keep on keeping on, to take loving, good care of ourselves, and to believe, I can do this. And my message to you is you can do this. My hope and prayer for you and for voices on the path forward, to cultivate that life-affirming, health-giving spirit of resilience that allows you to be the best possible person and the best organization you can be, to allow yourself to receive the love, kindness, and support as graciously as you give it, because I know there are some wonderful, loving people out there. Giving yourself the permission to be human that you're learning, to give yourself that what you're learning to give yourself spreads like a warm breeze across the bow of your heart, your family, your community, nation in this world, and that voices and its sponsors grow to their greatest heights in service, prosperity, and leadership. And with that, that's the self-care handbook I told you about. I thought you might want to know. You can scan this and find out where to go and how to get it, and also find out a little bit more about my book. But I leave you with that message. And Mary, thank you. I'm so deeply grateful to you for having me in your living room, for introducing me to your family, to the Voices family, and to so many of you for tuning in today, really finding the courage to come forward. And I hope and pray that some of the things we talked about really go in and make your holidays not only just get through the holidays, but allow you to harvest the opportunity of this holiday season and move into 2024 with a heart that's lighter and fuller in all the right ways. That's my hope and prayer for all of you. And I thank you with all my heart.
Ken, thank you for another wonderful presentation. Before we bring everyone up, I had some questions that have been submitted, and I thought maybe that would be important to include in the recording. Some of them you've touched on already, but you may have other thoughts. Number one is, why is death, grief, and especially suicide so difficult for us to talk about or even accept?
Well, it's the big one. When we talk about what it means to be a human being, naturally, normally, what it means to a human being, at some point, we have the ability to realize that we're not always going to be here, that we're part of a great mystery. And if we come from a family that has a certain faith, we get the formula for what happens. We get those ideas and imaginings, or what people consider to be rules of how this life works and what happens, and what the consequence of how we lived is for what happens when we die. So it's such a huge issue, but it's an issue that we hide and we deny and we repress and avoid, and we do everything because it's so damn uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. It's so sad. The idea, like, what? I'm not going to be here? What happens? Where do I go? Where does this conscious, aware, I live in the miracle of being a human being. I'm conscious, I'm aware. I live in a body that takes nourishment from the air. I have a digestive system that takes nourishment from food, and water and sustenance. I have an emotional system that can tell me what I'm feeling and sends down message to help guide and direct my decisions and my behavior, what I say, what I share. And I have this capacity to love. My God, where did that come from? The ability to love. And when I fall in love and when I experience love, how could I not also say, my God, what happens to all of us? What happens to us when we die? Where does the love go? Does it get stopped? I get cut off? It ends? There's nothing more? I'm obliterated? And so death is such a huge issue. Our own impermanence is such an important and huge issue. And no wonder so many people want to avoid it. But finding some measure of peace is within our ability. Whether it's what we do while we're alive to put our house in order, to make sure where there's an estate plan, legal and financial, so our family, our loved ones don't inherit a legacy of chaos while they're grieving, so that we've put our business in order, our houses in order, so they inherit a legacy of love. Dad, you've taken care of all these things. You've had all the conversations. I met last week with a family where the mom is dying because they hadn't had any of the conversations. And she said, can we get some help? We're not talking. We're not saying the things that I need to say to all of you, because I'm not going to be here in a couple of months. And it was one of the most beautiful meetings between a mother and a son and a father, where finally all the love that they had, the fear that they had about what's going to happen and what's going to happen. And also, three nights ago, I was on a show called Coast to Coast. It's in 600 radio stations across the country and around the world. And a woman called in. She had just lost her husband of 55 years. And she said one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. She said, my husband of 55 years just died. But before he died, you know what he said to me? He looked me directly in the eyes and he said, I will be waiting for you on the moon. He wasn't talking literally that he's going to wait, he's on the moon. But what was he saying to her about death? He was saying, if there's any possible way that I will be there to greet you, to hold you, to take you through this passage and transition, if there's any way my love will prevail, I'll be there. And take that calmness, maybe that as an element of calmness, into your deliberations when you get scared or when you get close to death. So I think we no wonder we avoid it, because it's so damn uncomfortable. It's so hard to talk about, but we need to find the courage and realize the benefits of facing into the issues around death.
Another question you've answered. Is it okay to avoid toxic family members in order to avoid the pain? I think you've already answered that question.
Yeah, but if Voices really wants to develop another program, we would have people going and removing those people from your holiday gathering. You would just write in and say, would you please get my uncle out of it, because he's going to say something insensitive and stupid that we shouldn't be trying to talk about, because we are never going to agree about this. And would you please remove him from our Christmas gathering? But since we don't have that service, it's going to be on you to either promise yourself. You see all the scar tissue I have on my tongue? That's for all the times I bite it, because it would be so stupid of me and so reckless and foolish for me to try to get into the weeds with certain people that are unapproachable, that don't listen, that are arrogant, that have it all figured out, that don't really care what I have to say and or how I see something. And those are the people that will drain you and drain a beautiful holiday gathering. So you need to be able to bite your tongue, silence your voice. There's nothing of value there for you. Don't get into an argument. Don't get into a debate. Don't fall into the weeds. And it's all, and also avoid those people. Stay up, hang out on the other side of the room. And if things get too heated, go home. Put your hand on your heart. Tell yourself, this is fine. This is enough. There'll be another day. I'm going to go home and take care of myself. I'm going to go watch a great, funny movie. That you have all these funny, uplifting movies during the holidays. I'm going to watch one that makes me laugh and cry. And
Well,
while
just surround
eating my
yourself with people that are going to be supportive. Another question. I lost my husband of 52 years this August. I'm suddenly thinking a lot about my son who I lost on 9/11 and wondering what he experienced. Need to stop this thinking. How?
yeah, how to put the stop sign in front of all those places where there's no redemption, there's nothing to learn, there's nothing but suffering. I often talk about the torture chamber of guilt. And that's kind of what, it's not guilt that you're doing, it's the torture chamber of, did they suffer? You know, it's our wonderings. Did my daughter died in a bus accident? Did she die right? You know, I could torture myself for the rest of my every day for the rest of my life, trying to imagine and feeling the agony of, even if she suffered for a microsecond, and hoping that the blunt force that she suffered, that she died without suffering. I mean, is that the best? That might be the best we can come up with. So putting up a stop sign, not only in front of people, but in front of your own imaginings, your own mind's attempt to connect the dots. We try to do that too much. We overthink. We want to connect all the dots. Did they suffer? Was it my fault? Is there something I could have and should have done or I didn't do? That kind of overthinking and ruminating drains us and doesn't allow us, it blocks the path forward. So when you do that, think of that. I just said stop. And sometimes you can even, it's called thought stopping. You can say out loud, stop it to yourself. Command yourself with your hand on your heart. I'm going to stop myself from thinking about that. Instead, I'm going to think about this and replace it with a kind of thought that's going to make your heart warm. That's going to make your heart sing. It's going to make your heart calm. And have that replacement thought ready. Have it in your back pocket.
Another question is, how does a family of a 9/11 victim actually get through this difficult time of year, especially after so many years have gone by already? Does it ever become easier, or does time itself make it easier?
Well, like I said earlier, that some parts of grief are linear and they change with time. Some parts of grief are beyond time. They occur outside of time. I know it's kind of an astrophysical imagining, but so to, with your foot on your throat, say, come on, it's been 22 years. If that's what you're saying to yourself, you know, how long is this going to last? How long do I have to go on this way? You know, instead of that, lower your hand to your heart and say, what could I do during the holidays and this coming year that might lighten my heart? What could I do? What could I say? What good could I do? How could I take one of these honorings that Ken just talked about and put one of them into play? because if that would lighten my heart, it would, because I don't believe things get, people ask me, Ken, does it get better? They're usually in their first period of grieving. And it's like, when does this stop? When am I going to stop? I can't sleep. I'm in agony. When does the wind start coming back into my sails? When can I continue my life since I've got it? And what I say is, for me, it never gets better. It gets different.
Ken, one question is how to strike a happy balance. And you did talk about balancing things between celebrating or ignoring the holiday. I used to host a big Christmas party, complete with Santa every year. Since moving to Georgia, I had nobody to invite. Finally, have friends from neighbors, but they all have plans. Decorating's become difficult, and I vacillate every day between tiring myself out, putting stuff up for what? There's nobody to see or enjoy it except me, just to tire myself out, to take it down again. I'm tired of reaching out when nobody wants to visit. It's depressing.
I actually love what you're saying. I love your declaration of enough, because I hear it as not only depressing, I hear as a part of you trying to speak to you, trying to reach you, trying to say to you, you don't have to do this. This is, when you look at the cost benefit of how much it costs, your energy and the time and the thinking and the invitations and the management of doing this, and what the benefit is. And is it really worth the benefit? Or is there some better thing that I could be doing with my time, my energy, my talents, my love, my desire to be with people? What would be a better way for me to spend this energy that would have greater benefit in my life? And I think some part of you is calling to you, asking you to let go of this old structure that had its day, to turn the page and to see, imagine what might be on the other pages. If you and I were talking right now, I'd say, give me 3 ideas for what you could do with your time, your energy, your passion, all this beautiful energy that you used to use to create these beautiful events. Since it no longer is a good fit, what are 3 things you could do? You might do them alone. You might do them with one friend. You might do them with a small group of friends. You might do them for a organization of homeless that helps homeless people. Whatever it is, try to imagine what that might be and see if you can't turn the page and do that different thing this year or next year.
Just a couple more questions. I lost my mom on 11/24 due to various complications. She was 93 and I was her caregiver. We were very close and she had an incredible sense of humor. I will continue to remember her smile and laughter. Thank you, Dr. Druck. So that's really a comment.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry for the loss of your mom, but I'm also so delighted. And I can feel your mother's sense of humor and her light passing into you and you passing it on to us today. So I thank you for that.
And then I just want to live again. I buried 2 kids in 1 year and I want to heal. That's a lot of loss.
And I said earlier, the least utilized 4-letter word that we need to use is the word help. And I think after suffering several losses, having a trusted confidant to support and help, or even a professional one, or being in a support group, in a circle of love and support, to be able to talk about all the elements of what you're going through, of what this is like for you, and what it means to be trying to fight your way back into your own life and to live on in a way that honors not only your 2 children, but honors you and what you've gone through. And I send you a huge hug of support, as I know everybody in this healing circle today would send you.
And Ken, I have a little image I'd like to share with you that speaks exactly to what you were talking tonight, and it's Snoopy. When we lose someone we love, we must learn not to live without them, but to live with the love they left behind. I don't know, can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
So I will send you a copy of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Well, I want to thank Ken once again for just a fabulous presentation. And I want to thank all of you for being with us here tonight.